Okay, let's get going. Morning all. Thank you for joining us at the latest Ask4 webinar. Hopefully you've got a coffee and a tea in hand to ease you into the morning. I sound like a breakfast presenter already, don't I? We're just missing the branded mugs, but to bring us back to topic. Today we're talking about the impact of a resident app and the impact that can have in a student accommodation building for students and for building operators. To introduce the faces on screen, I'm Jess Glover, I'm Head of Marketing at Ask4, and I'm joined by my colleague and Commercial Account Manager, Adam Newton, and Spike Global's Marketing Director, Johnny Wotton. Thank you both for your time this morning. To briefly introduce Ask4, we deliver a range of technology services for multi-tenant buildings, principally building-wide managed internet services, IT solutions for operational teams, and smart building technologies to drive ESG objectives. And to introduce Spike. Spike design property management and resident engagement portals for all sorts of communities, but today we'll be focusing on student communities and purpose-built student accommodation. Just to give some brief insight on the partnership, so why you're seeing Ask4 and Spike together. We came across Spike probably this time last year via a mutual client. After having looked at what the market was offering in this space, we were getting asked about it by clients. Was it something we delivered? And it's not something we wanted to deliver in-house, but we were impressed with the solution that Spike offered and Spike as a company, and we now readily introduce them to our clients. And naturally, as you'd expect, there's some commercial benefit for Ask4 clients engaging with Spike. So that's where the partnership came from. We're also looking at some exciting integrations projects with Spike over the next year to benefit Ask4 end users. So that's something we're looking forward to taking shape in the coming months. Introductions over, I think. Have I covered everything? Nodding heads. Helpful, thank you. Before we start, I think we're going to flash up a quick poll on screen just to ask the people who have joined us this morning if you are currently implementing a residence app. Which should pop up. You have to answer it to make it disappear off your screen, including me, so I'm going to tick the box. And I'll let people answer that while we carry on. But Adam, to go to you first, we've called today's session, Do You Really Need a Residence App? And that's because we want to really test the value. It's probably fair to say resident apps have been seen as a nice to have and an extra cost rather than an essential. But I just wondered if you could give us your insight from conversations you've had with clients. What do you hear them say about app technology and the issues it could potentially fix?
So I think to begin with, I think it's so readily recognised now that app technology can be fantastic, and the vast majority of people use it on a daily basis. Students probably on an hourly, minutely basis, but obviously, if you do have residence app, it needs to be bespoke, and it needs to really address, as you touched on, the issues and the problems that you're trying to fix. It is very much there's not a one size fits all for this. Obviously, different buildings, different operators require different things. So I suppose the specific issues that the operators in the PBSA market are coming across, again, high level stuff for the time being, but I think the main one, and it's kind of the holy grail for PBSA's providers, and it's creating a community. And once you've created a community, then hopefully or generally everything else should fall in line from there. To begin with, we know that all students come from all over the world. So if a student moves to the UK or Europe, wherever your building is, there's a very good chance that it's a completely new area, a new environment to them. And a bit of a plug for you here, Jess, but we know from the Students of 2022 research report that 95% of students surveyed said that they are really excited to explore a new area. So giving them the tools and the information, so if they move in and they have an app or information that tells them where bars are, amenities, social clubs, local services, GP surgeries, all things like that. That's going to be a huge advantage and help for them. Secondly, resident wellbeing, obviously a huge thing over the last few years. And I saw a BBC article, I think last week, that said 1 in 4 students actually feel lonely all of the time. And that is opposed to 1 in 20 adults. So you're talking sort of 5 times more students feel that way, which is quite a worrying statistic. But again, if you have an app that can create social groups and support networks, then hopefully that will help students not only come out of the shell, but if they do need help, then they'll have that forum to be able to do that. Resident retention, again, a huge one for all providers. If a student has everything in the building or the home that they're in now, why move? And on the flip side, for operators, that saves them time and energy and resources going out and trying to sell those rooms. Notifications and messages, we all know students are inherently difficult to get hold of. So a platform that does that successfully and efficiently would be a huge benefit. And whether that is just your rent's due next week, or we're doing a fire alarm test, anything in between, is a big advantage. Reduction and automation of manual processes, again, a huge one, but the one I never hear the end of is students post, and the amount of time that staff on site spend receiving and processing Amazon deliveries is ridiculous. I think Johnny might touch on that in a bit more detail a bit later, but again, that's just one. There are a number of processes that can be automated, and then your staff can spend the time elsewhere doing more worthwhile things. ESG, again, one we'll come back to in a bit more detail, but I thought I'd mention it now as it's the hottest topic at the moment. It feels like I've not had a conversation for the last 18 months where ESG has not been mentioned, but again, I think we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And finally, I think creating revenue streams, in a world where everything seems to cost an arm and a leg, clawing back some income is huge at the moment. It always is, but if there's an app or a tool that can create more value, fantastic. And again, that depends on the building and the area, but if you've got car park, meeting rooms, gyms, anything like that, anything that can create additional income is a real big plus.
Just unmuting myself, sorry. There's a few things to go at there then, Adam, in terms of what you're hearing people say and the issues they're grappling with when it comes to potentially using an app. Just looking at the poll results, so of the people we've got on here, 67% are considering implementing an app and 33% saying no, they don't currently use one, and we haven't got anyone currently on the webinar who is implementing an app. So plenty of people here interested, Johnny, in what it can do and how it can help. So without further ado, could you give us a general overview of Spike's technology and how it can address some of the issues Adam raised?
Sure, absolutely. And firstly, so excuse me, great to be here, and it's great to see such a great turnout, so fantastic. And then coming back to the poll results, that's great. So hopefully this will be a bit of food for thought and hopefully guide you on your thinking process behind implementing an app, and maybe hopefully you'll take away some useful sound bites and info as well. So let me just share my screen. I won't go into a live demo, just conscious of time, but I will flash up a few slides to frame some of the things I'm going to say. So effectively, Spike provides property management solutions for the residential sector. So our resident engagement app, Spike Student, can be completely white label and is used by PBSA operators across the UK and Europe. I guess it's worth stating the obvious that today's students are digital natives, having been brought up running their lives on their phones. They already do their banking, order shopping, manage their social lives. Why shouldn't they manage their accommodation in the same way? And we're all wanting that instant gratification and the ability to self-serve rather than relying on others. So that's really where our solutions come into their own. So if I jump to the next slide. Despite Student allows residents to effectively manage their everyday lives via a single smartphone app. So whether that's connecting them to on-site teams to report a defect or issue, making friends by joining the various online clubs and forums, accessing key documentation such as appliance manuals or policies and procedures, for example, keeping track of their rental payments, booking onto events or reserving on-site amenities, checking whether the reception has received the parcel, and even unlocking the front door of the app. So the possibilities are pretty much endless. And from an operator's perspective, having a single channel interface to push all communications through can really streamline and drive efficiencies of staff, allowing avoiding the need of having to send manual emails or individually using a number of other systems or channels. It all can be done in a single place. And what's more, critical communications, for example, can reach intended parties much faster compared to traditional methods such as the notices stuck on a notice board, or even handwritten notes pushed through a door, which may get lost in the abyss of a student room, let's say. And then also they can also post out frequently asked questions on the app. So rather than having to answer the same questions day in, day out, there can be a single place where they can drive people through to see those commonly asked questions. So let me stop sharing screen.
Okay, that's great, Johnny. Thanks for sharing. That's really, really useful to see. So I suppose just going back to the points that we raised earlier about what we're hearing in the market, it's a sort of a specific way that the app, I suppose, helps build communities to start with.
No, absolutely, and I think that's pretty key. I think we sometimes forget or don't always appreciate that actually moving away from home for the very first time is probably one of the most stressful events or experiences in anybody's lives, especially when they've gone somewhere, as you touched upon earlier, Adam, that they may not know anywhere or anyone or know the surrounding area. So if technology can help take that stress away, then it obviously has to be a good thing, right? So our Spike Student app, for instance, has a powerful What's Around Me feature that can highlight local shops and services. So for instance, some of our clients like to highlight where the different campuses are, doctor surgeries, sexual health clinics, for example, post offices, as well as bars and restaurants as well. And we also actively encourage our clients to team up with local businesses to offer exclusive discounts for residents, which then can be promoted via the app. So for instance, it could be 2-for-1 on cocktails, which always goes down well with students, to money off or discounts off stationery at the local stationery shop. And I know students often get that bad rep that they're almost that social parasites of the town or city, but actually showing the local community that there can be benefit and they can engage, and that again has a really positive effect to dispel some of that bad stigma. And I think you touched upon, Adam, earlier, the students of 2022 report that Ask For have done. I think I saw that they found that 75% of students see exploring a new town or a city as an important part of the university experience. So something our solutions can definitely help with. And I guess another way that technology can help create community is by allowing students to find others within their building that share similar interests and start connecting and talking. So for instance, one of our clients have a high number of international students, and one of them actually started a club to find others from the same country, which quickly really helped them to settle in, which is great. Another example is Film Club. So every month, students within a particular development have a vote on one of our forums on what genre or type of film they like to watch. in that particular month. And then they book out the cinema room once a week over the course of the month, and really have a poll to then work out what films they should be watching. So it's really a great example to show you how that digital, connectivity, online friendships can really turn into friendships in the real world, and how they can, enjoy where they're living. Now, there's a whole host of other examples I can spiel off, from like groups organizing their own, social events via the app, operators hosting an event in one of their lounges, from Valentine's Day balls to Halloween to careers fairs. So it just shows you how technology can really bring it together.
And I guess with students as well, when you're giving them, with the app for community, you're giving them a resource, and the rest they'll take care of themselves, because they're familiar with using all these things and WhatsApp groups and whatever else. But if they've got a central location for their accommodation, then they'll naturally form communities. They don't need too much pushing, I wouldn't have thought.
No, yeah, absolutely. And it's really just a good way for the community to sort of take on its life of its own. So rather than it's feeling very contrived or forced, people actually feel, I've got, they've got the tools in place I can really make this a home that I love living at. And to your point earlier, Adam, is retaining them. So why would they want to leave when they have all this, beautiful amenities, and they've brought these friendships and everything? So it really creates some a unique place for them to stay and enjoy their university years. And then I guess a couple of other points, or probably the last point to touch on, is all well and good having that interaction with students when they're in the communal areas, but I know a big concern for many of our clients is how to keep in touch with students when they're actually in their rooms. And we've teamed up with several wellbeing content providers to push and promote content directly to residents, from mindfulness advice, how to deal with anxiety, the pressures of exams, etc. And that can all be hosted and pushed via the app. And residents can also easily manage very quickly on-site teams if they need any support, or simply for a chat. I know sometimes having to leave the room and maybe arrange a face-to-face meeting, sometimes that can be a barrier. We really want students to be talking to on-site staff, and before, let's say, that those issues become a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Wow, all sounds fantastic, Johnny. Okay, so I think you've sort of done well to sum up community, and like I said, there's probably a few other bits and pieces that you can mention, but I'm sure if anyone wants to speak to Johnny about those specifically, then we can do after the webinar, just conscious of time. So community, so reduction and automation of manual process. Obviously there's many of those in every line of business, but are there any that you've sort of come across and helped with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I mentioned earlier on, having a single place where communication can be driven centrally can really help streamline operations. So staff don't have to use those multiple channels, instead can drive all comms through the app, so that everything can be done in a central place. So that could be anything from letting students know that an amenity is out of service, or the lift has broken down, to even promoting like particular on-site events and services as well. So I guess going back to the point about the broken down lift, rather than students discovering it themselves, staff can be proactive in informing students. So if they do live on the top floor, they need to carry a ton of boxes down the stairs, they won't be slightly irritated if when they go to the lift and it's not working. They can sort of plan around that, which is great. And I guess another way we can help really reduce and automate a lot of the manual processes. I think you touched upon, Adam, the parcel management issue. So rather than staff having to manually scan in parcels and perhaps then having to notify and send manual emails or other communications, letting students know that the parcels are ready to be collected, our technology allows someone or the staff member to scan a parcel in, and then that can fire off an automated email or a notification via the app to a student, letting them know that the parcel is ready to be collected. And there's some really powerful time-saving stats around that. So one of our clients reduced parcel processing time in the first 3 months alone by 75%. and actually that equated to more than 490 hours of staff time saved within the first 3 months, which is pretty powerful. I think if we put that into numbers, that equated into something like £7,500 in the first 3 months.
Yeah, they're big numbers, aren't they, for a saving on something so simple as parcels? Think of the time staff could be using on something else.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's not just about the financial cost, obviously that's great, but then, like you said, Jess, it's freeing up the staff. So rather than being in a back room, perhaps huddled over a screen sending emails, they can be they can be out the front and building the rapport and interacting with students as well, which is great. I guess finally, having a central management dashboard where staff can easily pick up on reported issues can also help improve response times of students. So, for instance, rather than having maybe a dedicated email inbox, which is looked at by a certain person, once a day, we have a help desk ticketing system, which allows staff to see the status of particular tickets and where they are and what actions are needed. So if you have staff and rotors constantly coming in and out of the building, rather than waiting for the same person to pick up on a ticket at the issue the next day, staff can very much come in, quickly see where things are, and then really keep the momentum going and that consistency, rather than feeling like it's just stuck with one person and they feel like they're chased and being chased. And then I guess the flip side of that, having a central place in the back end where you can almost see the history of a resident, so you can see what issues have they been raising, what have they been booking, and again it just saves the student having to relay that information over to different people time and time again. And something I get frustrated with, especially being passed around different people and having to explain the same issue all the time. It just drives me crazy.
Okay.
I'm going to interject here, Adam, and say I forgot to mention at the beginning that would you have time for questions at the end? So please do, if you're watching, pop questions into the questions box, and we'll pick some of those out shortly.
Lovely. Thanks, Jess. And finally, the last one that we mentioned, and again, a big value add for operators would be sort of a additional revenue stream. So again, Johnny, are there sort of specific examples you've got where Spike have been able to help there?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I guess a couple of elements here. As I mentioned, events can be promoted and managed via our platform. So it's a great way to promote the event directly to residents in the palm of their hand, without relying on posters or emails. And on the flip side of that, they can book and even pay for everything through the app. So actually saving them needing to wander down to reception, which could be a barrier and maybe put some people off, because they can just lay in bed and see all the events coming up, and then they can pay for it and book onto it, which is great. And actually, we have most events, you can also set like a number of tickets remaining. So that almost creates that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that if they're seeing, crikey, that at the start of the day there's 50 tickets and now there's only 20 left, you're going to drive some urgency to get them to book onto that and pay for that event. And I guess similarly, if there's chargeable amenities on site, again, rather than them having to walk down and manually book out that room, they can do that on the fly in the app. So they could be walking home and want to book the cinema room, and that can be all chargeable and paid again via the app if needed. And I guess finally, coming back to that community element, by linking up with external partners to provide additional services, anything from bedding packs to weekly cleans to pizza delivery and even beauty services, which some of our clients provide, that all could result in additional revenue streams in the form of commission being paid to operators.
Great, thanks for that, Johnny. And I think sort of moving on to the hot topic at the moment, so ESG. So how does the app contribute or help with ESG solutions and problems? Sure.
So I guess some of you on the webinar may or may not be aware, we've recently partnered with Utopia, an ESG data provider. So we now have the ability to ingest their data into our platform and start to do some really cool things with it. So for instance, operators can see the average energy consumption across the building and then hone in on the best performers and worst performers. And to give an example of that, Utopia did a study where they monitored a single building, and within that building alone, there's around about 1,000% difference in energy consumption between the best performing flat and the worst performing flat. And it turns out the best performing flat had the heating set between 18 to 22 degrees constantly, and the worst performing flat had been constantly heated around about 25 to 30 degrees constantly, with the student, rather than deciding to turn down the thermostat when they got too hot, they would just open the window. So it just shows you that if they had a way at the time to monitor that consumption in real time and then feedback to residents quickly, perhaps they could have reacted a lot sooner, because I think that particular student ended up costing that operator about £1,500 in additional costs for the energy consumed. So it just shows you the power that data can provide.
That's really interesting. It takes me back many years when I was at university, where my radiator wouldn't turn off. So I just had to open the window. So slightly different circumstances, but still yeah, salient point. So is there, how do you guys get engagement from students? So again, we know that they can be sometimes tricky to get hold of. So is that sort of a joint effort between you guys and Utopia?
No, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we can start to set that data, and then we can present it to students, residents, as something meaningful. So we can directly tell in the app, tell the students what the average energy consumption is within their building, and actually we can tell them how they're performing against that as well, and always start to rank them against others and to see where they sit. So they could, out of 1 to 500 residents, are they resident 50? And actually, how do they compare? And we can almost start to gamify that and create that friendly rivalry and competition where everyone's fighting to be the best performing student within that building, that #1 spot. So it can really create that friendly rivalry. And there's a whole bunch of studies that have been done in Europe around how even just informing residents and students can drive down energy consumption by 7%. And then I guess taking that concept a little further, if our operators are now able to see in real time what their consumption rate is, then they can start to work in some fair usage clauses in their contracts, which they can then start to enforce. So rather than students perhaps paying a flat fee or flat cost for the accommodation with bills included, they could be rewarded for good behavior. So maybe they'll be given monthly vouchers if they've achieving less than the average energy consumption, or on the flip side, if they're using a lot more, they could then be penalized, or in the contract say you have to pay actually for the amount of energy you're using above the average within the building.
It makes it much more tangible then for the student, doesn't it, if they can see themselves against an average and what that means against a fair usage policy. And powerful for the operator too, particularly in the current climate and rising energy costs, and who's going to absorb some of that cost. So yeah, it's real, isn't it, for operators?
Absolutely. It's almost like a carrot and stick effect as well, where you can educate them on one side, but then if needed, if they don't change their actions, then it can be written into the policies when it can be enforced. And I guess the final thing to add on that, we can also push useful tips and advice to students. So whether that's turning down their radiator by 1 or 2 degrees, probably a lot more on the example I gave would be needed, or even taking less time in the shower. It's just that education, because I think we're not always told. We're told to save energy, but we're not told practically how to do it. So any advice we can give to students, I think is definitely powerful.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we do have some questions that have come in. Shall I roll into those now?
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
We've got, so there's 2 or 3 actually of a similar nature. So I'm going to try and bundle them together. So a couple of people have asked how you get uptake from students to use the app. So say operator has rolled out an app across all of their sites, and linked to that, someone else has said with WhatsApp and Telegram and other platforms that they're already used to using, how do you encourage them to take X community out of there and do it in the app instead? So I guess it's really about uptake. How do you encourage uptake?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and something we get asked a lot. It's about creating value and driving users to constantly use the app. So as I mentioned earlier, becoming that single place. So the beauty of it's like student, I don't want to be too salesy, but we can interface, we can link, into the access control systems, can be event booking tool, can be the central comms tool, and just finding a place to drive all the actions through can really help create that stickiness and help people coming back to back. And it's all about changing your processes from an operator's perspective on site as well. So making, for example, the only way to book an amenity space or the only way to report a maintenance issue is via the app. Naturally, you're going to drive people there. And then if you're starting to add added value around building the community, promoting discounts and offers, that can really add value. And I guess just give an example there. One of our student operators had a 76% resident download rate within the first 2 weeks alone. So it clearly shows you there is an appetite from students to using that. Yeah. And I guess the final point to add on that is about keeping the content fresh as well. So making sure you're pushing, useful tips and tricks and updates to students. You're going to keep people coming back for more and more.
Yeah, and I guess is it something that builds over time? So you'll have that initial download rate, and then as the community starts using it, I guess it's like a rolling snowball.
Yeah, it's like word of mouth, isn't it? That students see the benefit and how others in the building.
Yeah. Okay. Another question someone's asked: how quickly can you roll it out, and does it make a difference if it's one site or multiple sites?
Yeah, absolutely. So it can be as little as 30 days, believe it or not. But often depends on the requirements and how responsive our clients are, giving feedback, etc. And as I mentioned, we have a whole team of in-house designers and graphic designers here. So we really take on our client's brand to create a unique bespoke app that feels unique to the development. And we can launch apps all at the same time. That's not a problem. It's just making sure from the client side, they have the resources available to support that. And sometimes it's useful launching at one site, learning what's worked, and then start to roll it out in a gradual phase.
Yeah, okay. And I think just to expand on that a little bit, it's really one of the reasons we partnered with Spike, because they very much operate very similarly to Ask4, where we supply it's a solution, and it's very much a consultation and a dialogue throughout the planning, where the operator or the client is looking for something bespoke and something completely tailored to what they need. So an app can be rolled out in 30 days, but the goal here is to get everything as perfect as it can be, completely understand what each client needs, whether it's bespoke to different buildings in different cities, and then roll it out. And like I say, it's one of the reasons that we we are such big fans of Spike, because it's a fantastic product. And yeah, it's very much right. We get this right, and we sort of go through the journey with the client, and make sure we're rolling out with the right product.
Yeah. Linked to that, someone has asked a pointy question. What's stopping us from doing this ourselves? So why can't we just build an app ourselves?
Yeah, I guess the short answer to that is nothing. Although over the years we had similar conversations with clients who actually had initially decided to go and do it themselves, and only to realize 6 to 12 months later. And it was a lot more difficult and expensive even than they originally thought. So it's not just about building an app or developing an app, because I think that's the easy part. There's the ongoing cost to consider, as well as hosting, maintenance, and all the bug fixes. And then also it's about how well it's integrated with the ecosystem. As I mentioned, we can integrate with access control systems, event systems, different content providers, and it's all about the bigger picture and actually creating an app that is going to be useful rather than just an app that you launch and then it's probably not as well designed as it could be because perhaps the end user hasn't been considered, or perhaps actually you've not thought about how to integrate it, and then you end up having 5 or 6 different apps or different applications. So
Yeah.
that can really turn people off. I have about 100 apps on my phone myself, and I probably only use like 10 of them. So trying to coming back to driving value.
Yeah, and the testing process is key as well, I guess, isn't it? Because if you're working with a partner that's rolled this out already in student accommodation, you will have come across what the issues can be, or what the barriers can be, or what works well. Like, it's already well road tested.
Absolutely. And I guess the final point from my side is, I guess it could be a massive distraction as well for an operator. Why would they want to start to transition to a software company and then have to hire a whole bunch of developers and manage them and retain them when they actually be focusing their core competency and doing what they do well is operating a building?
Yeah. Another question just popped up. How much do energy meters, hardware and software costs introduce into an existing building? So I guess that question might be linked to part of the Utopia conversation that we were just having.
Absolutely. Again, I can probably better go back to that person. I don't have the numbers to hand. Something Utopia pretty much provide the hardware, and we just wrap around their data into our platform. So more than happy to take that question offline and respond to it.
So there's a software cost in terms of ongoing costs for using the Spike platform, and then everything that will feed into the Spike platform. So if we're looking at energy metering and data like that, then you're going to be looking at Utopia solution. So it's how those things plug together. But to address directly the person that's asked that question, we will get back to you offline about that and pick that conversation up with you so that we can give you some numbers based on context.
Great.
Going to give it a second for any more questions to pop up. Adam, anything else that you wanted to flag, do you think?
No, just quickly, just touching on the Utopia question on the smart meters cost. There are such different levels of services, and there's a number of different things that the Utopian Spike products can monitor. So it's a bit of a sliding scale on cost, but like Jess said, I'm sure Johnny and possibly the guys from Utopia will be able to provide some interesting and useful information. Yeah,
I think to go back to the question we posed at the beginning of the webinar, which is, do your residents need an app? And I think we could flip that as well and say, do operators need an app? Because I think the benefits we've been talking about in this session are the tangible benefits you'll be delivering for students, but also the time savings and the cost savings and efficiency and all the rest of it for operators. I think it's very much a tool that swings both ways. There's benefits both ways, and it's a powerful tool both ways. And I think what we're saying in this conversation is, yes, you probably do need an app, but it needs to be bespoke to your needs, and you need to consider what your specific pain points are as an operator and the goals that you've got for your students and what you want their living experience to be like, and then tailor the app to those goals. So as we said at the beginning, it's not a one size fits all. It's very much a explore what the goals are for your student, your living environment, your brand, your staff, and then tailor the solution to that, which is one of the benefits of working with a partner like Spike, because presumably, Johnny, you can mix and match modules in the app and really tailor the outputs to what you need.
No, absolutely. So we have some clients that just have a base in other sectors that just have a basic comms tool, whereas PBSA operators are more than likely going to have amenity spaces which need to be bookable and events are running. So we, again, like just exactly like you said, there's no one size fits all. We work very closely with our clients to make sure the app is unique and bespoke and actually has all the features they need. Because on the flip side, if you have an app that has a ton of features that aren't usable, like some of the free apps out there, then it's not really going to feel bespoke or part of the building.
Yeah, and it won't drive community if there's loads of features that just don't work.
No, correct.
One more thing to link to before we finish. I know we've mentioned Utopia a few times, and Utopia, Spike and Ask4 are currently working with our research partner Redbrick on our next piece of research, and that's going to be covering how to influence behavioural change in residents in multi-tenant buildings, and that's very much linked to the conversation we're having around energy and sustainability, and how do you get the resident that's got their thermostat on 30 and all the windows open and is walking around their flat in shorts to modify behaviour. So that's something that we will be releasing this autumn, and that's very much aimed at giving operators very practical tools and examining the research that's already out there on how to influence behavioural change. So that's coming this October. And there is information on the Utopia partnership that Ask4 and Spike have with each other, the triangle that currently exists. You can find that information on the Ask4 website, and I'm sure there's information on Spike and Utopia's websites as well. But if you'd like any more information on that, please do get in touch with us. You can find all three of us on LinkedIn. You can find our contact details on our websites. We're at ask4.com. So please get in touch if you'd like any more info. Before I finally wrap up, Johnny, Adam, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just say great turnout today, and I appreciate everyone that made the effort to join us, and thanks both for having me on this webinar.
No, pleasure. Thank you, Johnny.
And likewise, so thanks for having me on. Thanks for hosting, Jess, and yeah, thanks for all the really useful insights, Johnny.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Johnny. And if, as we said, if anyone would like to talk about this topic in a little bit more detail, please do get in touch. And we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Great, thanks all.